Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world, and welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane, and I have my two co-hosts with me this evening, because it's evening here in the UK. Patricia, welcome.
Hello there, Sarah. Great to be here, as usual.
Brilliant. And David, welcome. As my co-host.
It's been a pleasure.
Excellent.
It's lovely to see everybody.
Thank you. And just because we like confusing ourselves, we have our guest this evening, David McLeod. So we got a double David. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sarah. It's my honor to be here. I'm looking forward to another brilliant conversation.
That's what we're about, if we can be. And our conversation, we like to give our guests the choice of the topic. So, David, we're going to be talking about bamboozled by beliefs. So would you like to share just a little bit about yourself and why this particular topic? And then we can go from there.
Well, thank you for that. First of all, again, my name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. I live in Meridian, Idaho, which is basically right next door to Boise. And I've been doing coaching since around 2005 on a non-professional level. And then in 2011, I started switching over to a more formal business model for coaching. And my purpose, I think, is to help people get connected back to the truth of who they really are. And I think that this is a big deal because we see people living all over the world in total confusion and trying hard to muddle their way through life and running into all kinds of problems. Now, the idea of beliefs, I think, we are, well, I don't want to use the word bamboozled just yet, but we are bombarded by the conditioning, the thoughts, the ideas, the orders, whatever our parents and our grandparents and our people before them have kind of brought down to us. It's a conditioning process that everybody has to go through. Well, I guess they don't have to, but that's what they end up doing. And it leaves us with ideas and beliefs that really aren't necessarily true. And so consequently, we do things, and I know, Sarah, you and I have spoken many times about this. We do things collectively that deny the truth of who we really are so that we can show up in a certain way, live up to other people's expectations, fit into society, and, that sort of stuff. And yet what happens is most of us, well, I shouldn't say most of us, but many of us end up being pretty unhappy in life. And, by the time we get to the end of our lives, we look back and we say, well, what happened? I followed all the rules. I did everything that people told me I was supposed to do. Where's all the happiness and the riches and the success and everything else that I was supposed to get? What happened? And so that's why I talk about this idea of being bamboozled by beliefs. Because, remember, we took on these beliefs when we were very young, and our ego mind, in its infinite wisdom to try and keep us safe in the world, really tried to implement those beliefs in a stronger way. So that's really kind of where I'm coming from, and I'm hoping we can unbamboozle some of these beliefs today.
And that's brilliant. But how many people actually follow and do all of that? They get the success, they get the good job, the lot of money coming in, the big house, the family, the kids, and they're still not happy.
Exactly.
It's where is the happiness? And the sad part is that we're led to believe that the happiness comes with achieving what our parents expect us to achieve.
Yeah. And
it's that courage, isn't it, to say that that's not for me. That, it doesn't matter. I remember when I walked out of my second marriage, my mother's reaction was, look at what's around you. And I said, pardon? I think we had a £5,000 mortgage on the house at the time. who wouldn't give their eye teeth for that these days? You know, we owned everything in the house. You know, we didn't owe any money to anybody. And I had a load of really nice stuff. And it was just like, but mother, that's stuff. This is about me. And that was the thing. It was, she was still in that old way of, it's got to be about stuff. It's got to be keeping up with the Joneses, rather than that thing of sort of actually what speaks to us. So Patricia, let's come to you next.
Well, I mean, I can mirror a lot of what you're saying there, because I too, faced with divorce, I really lived in quite a big house with fancy cars, la la la. Everybody thought I had lost my mind when I announced I was leaving and going. But I think I had come to the end, a natural end. It was only 7 years, but my life has gone in those cycles of 7-year bites, if you like. And I had come to the realization that all of that materialism really meant nothing. I felt as if I was sitting in a mansion, and yet it was empty. It was hollow, a hollow life. And at that time, I had acknowledged my spirituality when I was younger, but then you go through late teens and early 20s, all that, I had been denying that. And yet it just came to me, I have to stop being a serial people pleaser and doing everything, stay in this marriage so as not to upset mum and dad, and all these different things that were going on. So yeah, at some point you have to waken up and smell the roses and realize there is so much more to life than surrounding yourself with things or loads of money. I have to say now I could do with some money. I would say, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's like people pleasing has got to become a thing of the past, and pleasing oneself, motivating, inspiring, allowing what I believe to be spirit to come down and really inspire my soul, so that I'm empowered to go and then help other people help themselves, which is, I have really devoted many years to that now. And it's so worthwhile to see, people finding themselves, just as David says, we all do it our own way, but just coming to it from different avenues slightly. And it's really quite miraculous when people's eyes are opened, that all this that they've been led to believe, and it's, it's religion, it's education, it's parental, it's peer pressure, the list goes on. Now we can add to it social media. We've got to keep up to speed, people. We've got to use the right words. But it's true. It's evolving, it's changing, expanding. So that's kind of a negative view. So if we look at the positives, that there really are a lot of good things happening these days to highlight beliefs and to make people more aware. The COVID thing was an epic one. Let's all do global fear, and you know what? I've been a hypnotherapist for heaven knows how many years, and I know about programming the subconscious mind, and you needn't think for one moment that these governments don't realize that's exactly what they were doing, and programming people into being fearful. And it's unforgivable, the language they use, the repetitions. Bill, of course, my husband is also a hypnotherapist, so we were really so incensed by the misuse of power. And so that is a very big example of that just recently. But yeah, it's about highlighting people's beliefs. But you know what? Sarah, you and I had a laugh this morning. We were chatting about something else. And I suddenly realized I said to you twice, no worries, Sarah. And Sarah said, I don't have anyone else. I mean, quite a lot. Because she says, I just don't worry. And I thought, no, I know you don't, but that's just my saying. And I thought, I've picked that up. Nobody knows when I picked that up saying to somebody, oh, no worries. And not everybody has worries. You certainly don't, Sarah, which is great. And neither do I normally. Forgive me, black cats are about to become focal points. You're not meant to perform with animals. So, yes, I think that's about all to say at the moment. So, but what a wonderful subject, I should say, David. Great subject. And I'm interested to hear what you have to say then on how you're going to do that.
Your microphone is getting blocked now, unfortunately.
So it's just black cat energy. She's gone. Sorry about that.
Okay, now let's see if I can is my mic unmuted? Yes, good. Sorry, I'd muted my mic just in case it was causing the problem, which it might have been. So anyway, but David, let's come to you and let you have a say, and then we'll come back around the circle.
Okay. I think it's really interesting because, like you say, we're up till about the age of 7. We are really in touch with ourselves and know who we are. And then when we start getting into the systems, we're kind of pulled apart from who we are. And like you said, there's programs and systems that kind of detach us from ourselves. And it's very hard to get back to ourselves, our authentic self, because we are being taken away from who we are in many cases, I feel. But I had a really supportive family and allowed me to do what I wanted to do and supported me in that. And the biggest thing I found was when I was working in the, shall we say, the 3D world, I couldn't hold a job down. I just knew it wasn't giving me the freedom that my soul needed. And I felt suffocated. And I was one of these people that my turnover of jobs, until I started linking in and saying, okay, David, what do I want? And not what other people want from me. It was like I started to find my place in this world. And then when I started doing it, because I wanted to support people in the work that I do, I finded myself going into grey areas, so to speak. So making myself fit for other people again, which was a pattern from school days. And making sure I done this and I done that. And then I suppose latterly life, I suppose it's been the 10 years since I came up to my 60th birthday, that I started saying, no, this is who I am. And it was trying to get over that ego of not saying, oh, look at me, but this is who I am. This is what I do. And I'm up to other boxes because if I do, I'm shutting me down. So I was beginning to understand who the authentic self was, and that was who was needed to do this work. So it's been a real interesting lesson. But like many others in the support work I do, it's trying to understand, trying to let people know they are more than just the person in the mirror. And there's a lot more to them than just the physical self. And there's a lot more in there than what we realize once we start getting into our authentic selves.
Yeah. David.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello.
You were muted there for a second.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you. Yeah, I think, well, there's a few things here that I'd like to say. The first is that people in general have a false idea of who they really are. And that's geared mostly because of the powerful ego mind that we all have an ego mind. And so we tend to, through the ego mind, we tend to identify with some of the physicalities of life. For example, I might say, I am David, or I am a man, or I am, an author, or I am this, or I am that. You see, we identify with our name, with our body, with our thoughts, with our ideas, with our beliefs. We identify with the roles that we serve in society. But none of that is who we really are. All of those are simply expressions of our true nature by virtue of the fact that we chose to get involved in those things one way or another. So that's the first thing I want to say. And so the real truth of who people are is way, way deeper than most people even realize. It's not only deeper, but it's much more expansive and much more amazing and beautiful than people even give themselves credit for. So a big part of my work is to help people get down to that truth. Peel off all these layers, these illusions that you've created, these costumes and masks that you've put on in order to show up a certain way, and let's find out who you really are. And let's start showing that to the world and see what changes. That's really kind of what my work is about. But anyway, the second thing I wanted to say was this notion of beliefs. I have come to the realization that anything I believe is actually a limiting belief. And the reason is, the moment I believe X, my ego mind naturally starts to grab onto it. And so anything that is not X must be false. That's what happens with the ego mind. The ego mind, and not only that, the ego mind is going to look for all kinds of justifications and reasons and rationalizations for making every possible experience in life conform to X. And so anything that's outside of the realm of X becomes something that's excluded or ignored, or we try to conform every part of our world to what's X, do you see? And that's the problem that beliefs create. And this is true for any belief, even something that is a useful belief, like, for example, the belief in gravity, that if I jump off this cliff, I'm probably going to come to a rather painful conclusion, shall we say. That's a reasonable belief to have. But the real truth is, maybe it isn't true. Maybe, just today, maybe, if I jump off this cliff, I'll just float in the air. Maybe something will come up and like a magic carpet or something will come up and grab me. You see, all of those things are possibilities that we tend to exclude because we have the belief in the first place. And so that's what I'm saying, is we can restrict ourselves. We can hold ourselves back, and we can prevent ourselves from showing up fully in the world just by having a very simple belief. Now, what's worse is that most of our beliefs are unconscious. Most of our beliefs are deep in the dark recesses of our subconscious mind, and we may not even realize we have it. And I know for me, I've done a lot of deep work on shadow and stuff like that. And I think every time I do this, I'll say something like, oh, the world is not a safe place, or it's dangerous out there, or I don't care, pick a topic, money doesn't grow on trees, or any of these other beliefs that we all tend to have. When I go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into that belief, I always come to the same place. And that place for me is, I'm not good enough. Now, that might not be true for you. Some people have different words, different phrases, different ideas, but it always seems to come down to that core negative belief. Negative belief is people don't understand. Being driven, most of their belief that is 100% false, and they fail to live up to their full potential as a result. So, does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. And when you were talking, I was thinking about insecurities and thinking about the place I was in from a very young age, till nearly my 40s, you know, so it was just like, and it's that place of insecurity. So what has our journey been? It's not just about the listening to other people and what we've been told to do, etc., but it's also about the experiences that we've had, you know, and some of those experiences are about circumstances. They're not about people telling you you're not good enough, etc. It's just the feeling you get from the circumstances that have occurred that you're too young to understand that your parents are following rules that are not their rules. They're the system's rules. You know, sort of something's happened and they have no control over their ability to come and see you in hospital. It's dictated by the hospital rules. And it happens with so many different things. You know, I'm sure that there's been things about dictation, about schooling and all sorts of things throughout our lives, many different things. And grandparents that have different ideas about how you should be raised, you know, and if you're lucky to have great grandparents, but aunts and uncles, you know, and you're getting mixed messages along with the people from all the people that are there creating the person that you become because of all that. But that person isn't you. And it's what is the wake up that we receive? Can somebody who's listening to this program receive this as their wake up rather than having to have something that is more like a bullet up the whatever, you know, sort of a bit of bomb under them? Because we've a lot of us have had to go through something pretty traumatic to wake us up. And I think that's why we do this, isn't it? It's what can we share that can support people if they choose to listen, so that they haven't necessarily got to go through that pretty major wake-up call, which I've certainly been through. You know, I think all of us here have been through. But it's that belief about self. For me, I know that I have no memory, let's put it that way, of being told that I was special, that I was loved, that I was, amazing, any of those things. And that isn't about conceit. That is about if we're accepting that in its purest energy form, that is exactly how we should feel. But love for ourselves, care for ourselves, you know, sort of belief in ourself. But we're not taught that. We don't hear that. But I do have to say that humans are very, very good at remembering the negative. Yeah. And we are very good. So if there's been just a little bit too much negative, we are going to forget the positives that have happened. And I know as I said, I think before we started, I've blanked out so much of my life because of the hurt, the pain, the insecurities, and the unhappiness. And I can't get those memories back. But the important aspect is the healing of the shadow, the younger self, whatever you refer to it as, the inner child. And we can then complete ourselves. We can bring all those aspects back in, and we can support ourselves to create the person we should be. So, Patricia, let's come back to you.
Well, it's interesting as you're speaking, I'm kind of logging back in to childhood, and one thing that happened, I totally mirror you in the situation of never being told that you were doing well, never being told that you were loved, that kind of thing. And I was a singer, and I won a all Glasgow competition in Scotland one year. I think I was I don't know, 11 or something like that. And I actually walked home with my mother in total silence. Nothing was said. And it wasn't, I mean, I looked after my mother for 6 years before she passed away. And, you know, we got on like a house on fire latterly. We had great humour. But I said to her, I said, you know, can I ask you something? Why on that occasion did you never, ever say anything to me? Oh, but you don't do that. I said, what is it you don't do? You don't make much of one. They had 3 children. I've got 2 brothers. You don't praise one over the other. Everybody's got to be equal. Equal praise, that kind. And I said, well, okay, that's fine, but the other 2 weren't sopranos. We're going to win prizes. How do you get around that?
Right.
But you know what I realised, and God bless her, there was such a fragility about my mum, and the poor soul could actually get very upset at the relationship she'd had with her own mother. And I think David alluded to this in the beginning, that it gets passed down the ancestral line. She'd had a lot of pain. She hadn't been shown love. She didn't know. She was doing, as Louise would say, they're always doing the best they could.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly what she was doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, those 6 years I spent with her latterly, we had some great laughs. Now, I mean, I was in my 40s when Mum passed, but I would sing her a song. I would put on my Wellington boots and start stomping about the lounge, singing something totally ridiculous, and I would get her into hysterics. She just loved to laugh. So, I mean, forgiveness, of course. And one of the things is about helping people to see their parents in a different light as well, with more compassion and understanding, knowing that, wasn't great chaps, we have to acknowledge that, but they were doing the best they could. So that's my take on that. But David saying not feeling good enough, oh my God. Sometimes I think we could all write a #1 hit song, a global hit.
Yeah.
That's what we should do, something like that, honestly. Because so many people relate to that statement, I don't feel good enough. And when you actually think, well, good enough, comparing, I mean, it is so true what you're saying, David, about the ego mind. It's comparing, it's the competition. You know, what are you comparing yourself to instead of just understanding? And of course, my holy grail is to let or help people understand that they're souls having a human experience on the planet rather than anything else, and really getting that to be common knowledge. I'm always asking that question. How can we get that to become more common knowledge? Yeah.
Do you mind if I just respond a little bit to that? I first of all, I love what you were saying about the story about the child singer winning an award and not necessarily getting the kind of recognition or accolades or whatever that you thought you deserved at the time. And I totally get that. I can resonate with that. And I'm sure I've had experiences like that myself. And I do remember my mom saying something like equal love for everybody, i.e. no love for anybody.
That's it.
That's kind of how it showed up, I remember when I had my own kids, I said, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. Every one of my kids is a special, unique individual, and I am going to treat him or her that way. And so I had this thing. I remember people saying you're not supposed to have favorites. I said to myself, why not? So each of my children, my daughter, for example, was my absolute favorite #1 daughter. And my first son was my absolute favorite #1 son. And my #2 son, you're my absolute favorite #2 son. And I also would tell my kids every day, I love you forever and ever, no matter what, always, always, always. This is just something that I started doing. And now that doesn't mean that I was a perfect parent. I made plenty of mistakes, believe me. And I'm sure my kids have been misled on multiple occasions because of things I've told them. But it wasn't because I was a non-loving individual. And I really did celebrate them when they were, you know, it didn't matter. One son was a great hockey player. And I say, man, you play that game better than anybody I know. Yeah. You know, even though his brother might have been a little bit of a hockey player, he was more a soccer player. You see, so there's a way of encouraging. We can learn something from our parents. Yes, they did the best they can. And I'm not going to fault them. I'm not going to try and shame my parents or anything like that. I love my parents, even though they've all passed, you know. But that it's just the truth that we all just do the best we can with what we've got at the time. We make choices based on the information that we have at the time. And sometimes those choices get us in trouble. And so we have to enjoy the consequences of the choices we made in whatever way that might show up. So anyway, I'm sorry. I took a little bit more time than I wanted, but that's my point.
David, let's come back to you.
Yeah, it's really interesting, say about things being passed down from your ancestors. I feel so much is in their DNA that's passed on to us. So we start carrying a lot of other people's stuff before we've even started to experience our own. Yeah. So we're kind of confused right at the very beginning. So right. We're having to fight the way through ancestry stuff, and that's brought down, as well as our own, finding our own self. So it's not surprising so many people are confused about who they are. But I think we have so much now, so much awareness, so much knowledge that we can start finding people that can help peel away things that are not ours to get back down here. So I think it's a very exciting time for people to say, okay, I've got the opportunity. There's so many skills like yourself, David, that people can come to and start peeling off all this other stuff. You know, I better not do this. And I know when my first awakening, let's say, became to step into my light work, it takes trauma. And I found myself homeless. And that was the waking up. I lost my home. I lost everything. I had one pair of clothes that I could stand up in. And it was unfortunate circumstances that there was storm damage on the building that I was living in. And there was nobody there. We couldn't rebuild it. We couldn't get a grant. So I ended up on the streets in Aberdeen for 6 months in the winter, which anybody knows here in the UK can be the coldest at the warmest times. So, and then I found when I looked back and said, why is this happening to me? But it was happening for me because it was peeling away everything. I lost everything. And then I started seeing myself for who I was, how strong I was, and the abilities that I had deep inside that could carry this through me. And that's when the light work started as well, and the channeling. So, yeah, Sarah, it's sometimes we need those for a shock to the system for us to wake up and say, there must be more to me than the building and my clothes that I wear. And that's what shook me. And it was really difficult times, but it started to show me the way. That was 30 something years ago now. And so when I was in my mid-30s, so it was really quite an interesting journey. But all the time I had supportive parents, but I still had to go through all of that to start finding out who I was and why I couldn't hold a job down in the corporate world. And now, as I've grown on, got more confident in myself, I start to realize why I couldn't hold a job down or found it very suffocating for my soul.
Beautiful.
And that's just it, isn't it? You know, we go out, we do jobs that because we've got to earn the money, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I did, yes, there were jobs that I did that I absolutely hated, you know, because I had to bring the money in.
Yeah.
And seriously, don't ask me how. But when I resigned and I said, that's it, I'm going self-employed. And then my friend Trevor sort of said, we need to get you a place that you can have a therapy room. He wanted to get back on the housing ladder. So as friends, because that is what we are, we bought this house. A house we should never, ever, ever have been able to have afforded to buy. It's this house, and we've been here 17 and a half years. How? It's how. I, as I said to you earlier, I just don't worry. There's no point in worrying. When it came to the buying of the house, the people that were selling it, they had to have an issue that created a problem. I didn't. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to be okay. Because I'd been told time to move on. And I didn't know, because I just resigned. And I was thinking, what the heck am I moving on from? I've just resigned. Now what? And I just said to the universe, you bring it, I'll do it. And then Trevor said, all my friends are selling their house. It's got a room you can use. And it just like came and looked at the house. I said, yeah, okay, fine. 17 and a half years we've been here.
That's great. Huh?
It's happened. It's trusting. And I think, I'm not saying that we haven't had to work to make it happen. It's not as if I've sat on my backside or he's sat on his backside and it's just happened. We had students, we had lodgers, we had sort of all sorts of stuff, so we haven't necessarily always had the house to ourselves. But we have made it work. But the universe has supported us in that. Mm-hmm. I've heard the saying, somebody say, if the path is too easy, you're on the wrong path. And I actually, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. Because when I walked out of my marriage, I then got told that we were all going to get made redundant. And I got the chance to move down here with the company that was taking the company over. Because I had taken the step, suddenly everything seemed to slip into place, even down to buying the house prior to this one.
Exactly.
That courage to step out of that job and to take the next steps from that and to be open to what the universe brought. I'm a great believer that if you are on the right path, actually things can flow. They really can. But it's believing in yourself and believing in the higher aspects of yourself. Because as much as I say the universe, is it not what the soul has chosen and you're just following the blueprint of your life, that what you've created, that what you have chosen? If we're true to ourselves and listen to the heart rather than the head. But what is it they say? Follow your heart, but remember to take your head with you.
It's interesting that you say, Sarah, about, you said, if it's too easy, you're on the wrong path. Well, there's an example of a belief that somebody has. And of course, they will probably find that most of their life is a struggle. And then because of it, it's a struggle. They think, oh, phew, thank God, I'm on the right path. And this is the problem whenever you have any kind of a bumper sticker belief like that. And it's so easy to fall into that trap. Anything that's short and easy to remember, your ego mind is going to latch onto it. Now, on the other hand, you reversed it and you said, if I'm on the right path, then everything just goes smoothly. All right. That's a belief also. And yet I will bet from time to time you run into some obstacles, you run into some challenges. But the truth is, and I really agree with you on this, if I can just stay connected to the truth of who I really am and continually align myself with that truth, then everything works out. And coming back to what David was saying about, being homeless. Now, I've never had that problem myself, although I will admit that I've been out of a job multiple times, and I've been wondering, where's my next meal going to come from? But what's interesting to me is in every case where that happened, somehow the meal always ended up on the table. Somehow the house was always there to protect me. So far, that has been my experience. Now, I know that's not true for everybody, but that's been my experience. And my point is that I am choosing to believe, using that word again carefully, I'm choosing to believe that the universe is really a benign force that is here to support my experience of, as Patricia said, a spiritual being having a human experience.
Patricia.
I so agree with everything that you're all saying, really. As I look back over a pretty varied life, there is a distinct pattern evolves out of it, and that is I was brought up in a house where my mother took in boarders. They were all veterinary surgeons. They were all men. So I was the only young girl there, and brothers, dad, mum. So she and I were the two females, rest of the place all male. Then I go first job into the bank, predominantly male, sort of local Glasgow bank, predominantly male. I, at the age of 18, 19, struggling slightly with some of the authoritarian attitudes, and going from that to the electricity board, working with forward planning, energy, and all of that for 2021, would you believe? That's what I was doing back in the 70s, great fun. And, a lot of the issues then were about everything that's going on now about this planet, but that's another subject probably. But then going from there, being prompted, well, that's fine, you've been there 9 years, that'll be done now, we know you're doing that, so away you go again. And I just wrote into the Glasgow Herald after a marketing job for Barclays Bank. And of course, the first question they asked me on the interview, well, what do you know about marketing? Well, I don't really know anything, but I've done this and I've done that, and I was singing in the Albert Hall the other day, and I was, I know how to sell myself, and la, la, la. And they were deeply impressed with all of that, and then they hired me. So here am I, teeny Annie, walks into the sales team for Scotland, the only female out of a whole boardroom table of men, all men. And the whole sales team was 440 men, and I think there were 3 females. So, at some point, I think the penny kind of dropped. I was feeling less than, not good enough, because I would get rude remarks like, how did you get this job? You must have done, rude remarks, things, horrible things, won't go there. But, there was all that, and I really had to toughen myself up. And that was big learning. But all the time, what they were showing me, what the universe, and it is benign, David, there's no doubt about it, but they were showing me this great disparity, this huge difference between the attitude to women in business as opposed to men. And I mean, it really, business was men. Women shouldn't be there. Women should be at home looking after kiddies, all the rest of it, which of course I think is a wonderful thing to do, don't get me wrong, but that was the paradigm, these were the beliefs, and we were really, I suppose, at the forefront of beginning to claw our way out of those beliefs. These are huge beliefs, And I believe, and you know, sometimes I just listen to the news occasionally and you hear various things. I'm not sure. People think, oh, there are so many more women now and it's all becoming this, that, and the next thing. I'm not sure because it's, I don't know, it seems a bit superficial what's going on. And there needs to be a depth of understanding, and there needs the women, in my opinion, on this planet really need to step into their self-esteem, their self-love, and their self-power, as you say, David, to really understand who they are, the authentic being at the center of their soul, because we have the capacity, and I'm not being in any way anti-male here in any respect at all, but together, you see, for me, it's always been about equality. It's about being together in this brain, left, right hemisphere, working together, mind, heart, in harmony, working together, coming forward. And then opening the possibilities, the potentiality that will be born from that. They haven't really touched that yet. I don't feel we've really quite arrived at that yet. Personally, I've been, for about the last 10 years, I've been embattled with health issues that I really feel I'm coming out. I've just got one operation coming up in the next week or so. Hopefully that will realign me, and you know, a month or two later I'll get back to doing, not sure what they've got me doing, but something. But even then, at this moment, I am writing a book, and it's about the divine feminine, because the divine feminine has immense powers. I know the divine masculine does, and together, hand in hand, invincible, amazing. But we must use our brains together. And you know, I'm writing the book. I just channel creative, fine, and then they come in with the left brain comes in. Here's the structure. Here's what you're doing. Here's how many chapters there are. You'll do this, 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 and this. It's all very clear. It's always, you know, I mean, honestly, it just comes in, and it's not a bother. I might put it off for ages. Sometimes I just feel, I think, oh, I don't know if I can do it, don't do it. And then when I start, it just goes, you know, which is great. But, you know, I just feel, I think I'm expressing my frustration at myself a little bit. I just feel I've got so much to come through, and it's not, I can't come till all this surgical stuff's going on, you know. But it's, I think you said it as well, it's exciting, because if we really, really, if the girls really get this, and so there's a huge education needed to get them to step up and not try, don't go out and play rugby. Why do they do that? They want to be like the men. You know, can we keep rugby to Wales and England and Scotland, and just keep, you know, the ladies doing something like the hockey or whatever we used to do? You know, rather than we don't want to be like the men, but we want to work with them, yeah? So I don't know where all that came from, but there you go.
I'm just going to add one thing here, and then I go to the two Davids before we have to close. We need to get rid of the box for the men and the women. We really do, because men have felt under pressure over the years for different things. Women have felt under pressure for totally different things. And it's getting rid of the box for each and every one. So that, you know, I hear everything that you're saying, and I think, you know what, we should be able to do the things we choose to do. And there shouldn't be that restriction. Oh, that's more of a woman's job. That's more of a man's job. It's get rid of the box altogether. And as you say, Patricia, work together. So David, let's come to you, and we'll finish off with you, Dave. David T will come to you, then David M will come to you for finishing
I was
off.
confused for a minute. I just want to pick up on a couple of things, a couple of words that come in, because I was sitting there and listening. And what was coming up in my mind, it's the importance of aligning yourself with yourself. It really is. It's once you align yourself and understand who you are and what your soul or your higher consciousness is here for and who it's about, then you can put yourself into those situations. You're more aware of where you need to go, more aware of who you need to meet. And it's those gut feelings. This trips us up so much. We need it for it to see. We need it for the heart to keep pumping. But we've got to get in touch with here, because this tells us more about who we are, our inner guidance. And once we start aligning, things fall into place. But we have to have those, let's say, obstacles to understand where we're not meant to be and where we think, okay, that's not me. And we have the brick walls that we come up against, say, okay, this is not me. That's not my part of the journey. So it teaches you where not to be and what not to be, and really get touch inside. And it's like you said, David, the alignment of the self. Once you understand yourself and get right in here is so important, because then you understand yourself and your journey and your purpose here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're more comfortable with this.
David.
One of the things that I was going to say, remember we were talking about being bamboozled by beliefs. That was the main title of this. And there is a phrase that I remember hearing when I was much younger, and it had to do with encouraging people to become better salespeople and make more money and become more successful and all this kind of stuff. But I remember, and I don't know if I'm going to get this phrased quite right, but it was something along the lines of, whatever you can conceive and believe, then you can receive, or something like that. Now, it might have been someone like, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. Zig Ziglar is the name that's coming to my mind. That's it. But I believe there's a great deal of truth in that statement. What you can conceive and believe, you can receive. And it kind of ties in with the law of attraction. But what people fail to understand in the law of attraction, and this is why I call it the flaw of attraction, what people fail to understand is what you attract into your life is aligned with who you are, not with what you're thinking. Even though if you might be thinking, oh, I invite, all this beautiful money into my life, but underneath in your subconscious, you're actually saying, well, money doesn't grow on trees and I don't deserve money and blah, blah, blah. If those are your unconscious beliefs, that's what you're really going to attract. So it's coming from who you are, or the essence that's there. And this is why, if you're not getting what you want in life, maybe it's time to look to your beliefs. Maybe uncover those beliefs, especially the unconscious ones, and decide whether those are beliefs you want to keep, or if you want to release them, or if you want to just change them, or you want to find some new way of being. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about being aligned with the truth of who I really am. Because the external reflection, what I think, say, do, or feel, all those things outside coming from who I am, or who I'm choosing to be in this moment. So if I don't like what I have in the world, the only thing I can do to improve that is to come back here and decide what needs to change from in here. And it's only this change from within that's going to affect change outside.
Here.
I think the word on the end is achieve.
Oh.
But to think about it, it's those thoughts you have about yourself, you're listening, those words you say about yourself. Be careful, you are listening. There was something I think I only read today, which was along the lines of if you're just constantly berating yourself, telling yourself you're not good enough, you are going to believe that. It is up to you. I make it a habit every day to say, well done, you've really achieved today. It doesn't matter how much I've achieved. For some people, it may just be an achievement to be able to get out of bed. It depends what's going on in your life at that point in time. But don't wait for that acknowledgement from anybody else. Acknowledge it in yourself.
Exactly.
Because then you are going to help yourself to believe that. What are we doing for ourselves? Let go of those old beliefs so that we can step more truly into ourselves. There are many different techniques that support that, whether they're cognitive or not, and there are people out there that can help you and support you. And we should do that. So we're very tight on time. But is there anything, because I've just added my last bit, if I come back round again, anything finally, Patricia, you'd like to add?
Well, I guess I very much enjoyed the conversation. And because I did all the Louise Hay work back in the day, 80s, 90s, that it's echoing on that, and all the belief work that, I've done a lot of work as well. And yet there are always new things surfacing. How many times have we all said, well, that's it, I'm clear now, folks, that is not wonderful, I've got it all dealt with. And you can be sure the minute you say that, the next day, boop, something will come in. So
Exactly.
you've just got to keep your eye on it, haven't you? And love yourself like there was no tomorrow, honestly. And it will be fine, because we're in this magical and mystical universe, and they're listening to every single word. And I'm so aware of that here. We manifest all the time. And David, David Terrell, I'm going to make you jealous. I was planting brassicas today. I got all my beetroot planted, thanks very much. Leeks to beat the band. So you'll have to come over here and visit.
Thank you.
Flowers.
Thank you, Patricia. David T.
I will be quick because I know we're short time, but what I hope that David's brought to the table and we have it in this conversation is how easy it is to self-sabotage ourselves. It really is. And just by changing that belief or that understanding and being aware of the words that we use, life can change so much for us. So thank you, David, for that reminder of, being there to remind us all, don't self-sabotage ourselves. It's so easy to turn it around.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And David, finally.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I guess my final words to everyone would be, no matter what you might believe about yourself, it's probably not true. If you want to know the truth about who you are, take a deep dive from your head way down here into your heart and into your soul and get down to that true essence. Because I think what you'll discover is that you are indeed a divine, magnificent, unlimited spiritual being of light and love who just happens to be having a temporary human experience on the physical plane.
Thank you so much, folks. I will make sure that both David's and Patricia's and my, you can look at our websites if you want to. They'll be under the video on YouTube, and all our information is on the Gift of Healing TV website under today's conversation as well. So please do check out, and please feel free to contact us if you feel the urge to do that. We're all here. This is why we do these programs, so that we can connect with people, we can touch people's lives. So thank you to our guest, David McLeod. Thank you to my co-hosts, Patricia and David. And thank you to you for watching. And just to say, next week, I'm going to be sharing an exercise And actually, this comes back to your comment about understanding, because this exercise is on understanding. So I hope you'll join me for that. Thank you, folks. Thank you to all of you. Love, peace, and light. Namaste, sweet souls.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
David.
Bye.